Economics. My name is Tom Liu. I'm a professor of public nutrition at the University of Central Florida. My background, actually, I grew up in Taiwan, so I was surprised, when the host asked me to chair this panel. But I did have more than 20 years of experience working relationship with my colleagues in China. Back in 1990, when Chinese Public Nutrition Society and the Chinese National School of Administration, they planned to develop their professional work. So they sent their representative to the US. And during that time, the counterpart, the American Public Nutrition Society, and the president of ASPA checked around, and they found one Chinese background. That's me. So I was a person to help to set up, develop a bilateral agreement between ASPA and the Chinese Public Nutrition Society. Then later I had the opportunity to also work with the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, on their, to support China's first 5-year administrative reform. I was involved in the evaluation. Then later, then participate in their government projects, then university development because of the creation of a Master of Public Administration degree, MPA degree. So I had the opportunity to visit many provinces, cities, and also serve as a guest professor for several universities. Now, this year, immediately after the first panel, talk about the cultural understanding. Now, it's very important. Now we focus on the economic relationships. Before they showed off my materials. Before I want to introduce our speakers, I want to give you some background information about, yesterday I reviewed some of my data. I just collect, I think 5 or 6 information for you, give you background information, so later you have the knowledge and the concept to ask questions to our distinguished speakers. Now, first, let's go to the first about the overall GDP, and you can see I put here is 2010. Of course, U.S. still is number 1 in the world, and we had trillions. That's almost 15 trillions. But it's very important to notice China become number 2 in the world. This just happened last year, because the traditional, Japan was number 2 in the world in terms of economic market, economic system, and China surpassed Japan last year, and they have the number there. Okay, then please go to next one. I also found out some international trade data. This is from our census data from 1985 to 10. I collect the number there from the overall trade numbers, then export imports data. Then of course we had a trade imbalance, trade deficit with the Chinese. Then you can see back in 1985, the overall trade number was 6.8 billion. And on both export and import sides, it's about 3.9 billion. And we just had a small deficit in terms of about 6 million. Then the deficit grew, then from 2008, 2009, and 2010. And 2010, the deficit was 273 billion, yes, okay. Then I want you to pay attention to the number on 2008, which was a trade deficit of 268 billion. Then we can, because I want to use the number to look about the next figures. Okay, this I found from Google and search internet. You can see U.S. Trade surplus and deficit, and you can see that at the bottom, U.S. we had a big trade deficit. But do you remember the 2008 data, our trade deficit? So actually, our trade deficit, China is about close to 40%, 39% of our deficit, go to China. Then also from this figure, you can see on China's side, they enjoyed a large surplus, right? It's almost, I can see here, it's 440 billion. Again, you remember the data we put in 2008. So there's more than 50% of the Chinese surplus. was from US. So this is the overall information. Then later I also get some data for Florida. Please go to next. What's the, I have 3 kids all grew up in Florida. So what's the Florida situation? Of course, also China is the #1 country in terms of import, Florida imports. And you have data there. Then let's look about the export. Florida export, next one. China, Florida export, China is not #1 country. Actually, China ranks number 16. So in Florida, we had a probably deficit about 9, this is 9 billion. This number is million, okay? So please go to next one. It's now we go back to this panel title. It's U.S.-China Interdependent Economics. I like this presentation because you can see if the two sides work together, we can see the whole economy run smooth. But if not, then we have some problem. So on the one hand, it's collaboration. On the other hand, maybe confrontation. So today I want to introduce 2 distinguished guests, speakers. The first one is Ambassador John Vanuro. John Vanuro served as a deputy U.S. trade representative between 2007 and 2009, and he had many years' experience on U.S. international trade. Then our second speaker is Mr. Zhang Shouguang. He's a minister counselor for economics and commerce in Chinese embassy, and both will give you inside information about the international trade and their economics. Okay, let's first welcome Ambassador Varuno. Okay.
Thank you very much. I became a little nervous when I saw all the numbers on those slides. I agreed to the speaking arrangement only because I was promised there'd be no math. So I'm hoping in the Q's and A's there'll be no math. I was an English major, so I avoided math wherever possible. I'd like to begin by thanking Congressman Frey for putting this together. Thank you for your public service, and most importantly, for your commitment to the public service of the next generation, which you in this room represent. I also want to thank our friends from China who are with us today. They have a very important job, and they were selected by their government to represent their country in Washington as diplomats and around the United States as diplomats. And that is an enormous privilege that they have, but it's also an enormous compliment to their abilities. And the diplomatic corps of every country is terribly important to make sure that people understand each other. And fortunately, the linkages between our two countries today is not solely reliant upon diplomatic channels. Every day, there are more students, more tourists, more business people that travel back and forth. And that type of understanding, as was discussed in the previous panel, is what's most important for us to truly understand each other as people, as countries, what motivates us, how much we have in common, frankly. And the world will be a much better place as more and more of us have these interactions. I would like to begin also by apologizing. My remarks will be optimistic, and I fear that in many times, especially in political discussions, optimism is not rewarded. And as Congressman, I'm sure, can attest, fear and dragons to slay is always the easiest focus for a politician to have, and the ripest fruit to talk about the problems of the day. Newspapers do that every day. But the truth of the matter is there are many, many great things happening in the world. And you as the next generation, the vast majority of you in this room are the next generation. And you are coming into a world that is fabulous, frankly, and will get better. And if you look at any macroeconomic and other standard of quality of life in the world, they keep getting better, and don't lose sight of that. And I urge you to continue to have an interest in public life. Some of you will run for office someday, but many of you will choose not to. But I urge you to be involved in government. It's important. I want to talk about 4 things today. First, I want to talk about the concept of zero sum, and then I want to talk about rules, tools, and schools. And I'll be brief. Zero sum. Zero sum is probably best describe that concept by talking about a University of Florida versus a Florida State football game. That is the classic zero-sum situation. One team is going to win, the other team is going to lose. There might be good and bad things surrounding that football game, but at the end of the day, it is a zero-sum proposition. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. Trade is not zero-sum, and that is, frankly, the most important concept I would like to leave you with today, is an appreciation that in China, in the case of U.S. and China, China's growth, enormous growth over the past 10, 20 years especially, is a huge benefit not only to the world and the United States, obviously to China, but it is an enormous benefit globally. And we need to understand that everyone's growth, every country's growth, and the education of its population and businesses being successful, all of that is classic win-win. It is not win-lose. If you look at a chart of global economic well-being, it was pretty flat, frankly, for thousands of years until the Industrial Revolution. And since then, it's been the classic hockey stick, steep, steep rise. And that is the simplest and best expression of the fact that we don't live in a zero-sum world. We live in a world where everything has potential to grow, and the pie grows, and we share in the growth of that pie. Let me talk next about rules. By rules, I mean government. I mean rules that we establish by which we trade, by which we do business, by which we operate. And rules are important. I've spent a lot of my career focused on certain rules, trade rules, the WTO organization, bilateral trade rules. There's a number of rules that exist that help us determine and define what are fair terms of trade, so that there is economic benefit for everyone and political support for those rules. And wherever we run into political trouble in terms of international trade and globalization, it's usually because someone thinks that someone isn't playing by the rules as they should exist. So over the next 10, 20 years, I think there's going to be a lot of work to be done on fine-tuning those rules. And the economy, I would describe the problem in the following way. In the United States, when our economy was largely a local agricultural economy, we could get by with mostly local and state laws and rules. When we became a national economy in the last century, we needed to grow national laws, national institutions, so that terms of trade within the country could be fair and appropriate in terms of competition and safety of food products, et cetera. And what's happened over the past 20 years is the global economy has really exploded, but our rules are still trying to catch up. And over the next 20 years, we're going to need to really fill out those global rules so that they better fit the global economy. And that's what you, the young people in this room, I think will be part of, and I think it will be an exciting part. So that was tools. That was rules. Let me talk about tools. By tools, I mean machines and stuff that innovators create. And there's a long history of incredibly consequential tools, starting with the steel plow in agriculture, the printing press, more recently computer chips. This innovation that is so abundant today is a relatively new phenomenon. When I was your age, long term was like 2 weeks maybe, so it's probably hard to fully appreciate when I say it's a new phenomenon, meaning it's only 200 years old. In the course of human history, that's pretty new. That's a blink of an eye. And what has happened over the past 200 years is not only the pace of innovation increasing, but just the culture of innovation, that every day millions of people in the United States, in China, in Brazil, in Ghana, get up every day and think about how to build a better mousetrap. And that culture and that ability to connect has made our world, will make your world, fundamentally different from what it was 50 years ago and certainly 200 years ago. And appreciating that tools are such an important part of the way we live and operate and our economies grow. And there's an important relationship between tools and rules in the following way. As countries trade more, there's a bigger market. and therefore there's a bigger incentive, a greater incentive to innovate. If I'm in the business of making fishing poles, and my market is 5, I'm probably going to make those fishing poles by hand because it's the most effective and efficient way to make 5 fishing poles. If my market is 5 million fishing poles, I have a great incentive to make machines that make fishing poles. And that is what has happened in agriculture, it's what's happening in manufacturing, it's what's happening in every part of our economy. 100 years ago, 1/3 of Americans were farmers. Today, about 2 or 3% of us are farmers, yet we produce immensely more food today than we did when 1/3 of us were doing it. And that's simply because of technology, innovation, machines that have been brought to agriculture. And that's happening in every area. So tools are an important part of the new economy, obviously, and trade and tools are integrally connected because of the growth of the markets. The last thing I would mention after tools and rules is schools. What is in your head is what's most important, frankly. If you look at Florida, obviously shared in the great history and tradition of space travel, putting the first men on the moon. The difference between 1969 and 1909 wasn't the material that was on the Earth to build an aircraft, a spacecraft. The difference was what was in the head of the scientists at that time. And every day, the importance of the economy, any economy, of the know-how, the ability to convert sand into computer chips, metal into aircraft, all of that is know-how. So this innovation is possible only through schooling. And I would urge you to think of schooling not as a box to check, not something to get done when you're, after high school or after college or even after graduate school. It is a lifelong process, and it is important to think of your careers as problem solving. Think about the kinds of problems that you like to solve and gravitate towards those, because the most exciting and not only financially rewarding, but the most interesting careers you will have will be those where you get up every day and you're trying to solve a problem. And different people, we all have different types of problems we like to solve. Some people like engineering problems. Some people like math problems, which I don't. But I like legal problems. So think of your life and your career as problem solving and the kinds of problems you like to focus on. The last point I will make is that the title of this panel is do China and the United States need each other? And my only reticence to saying yes is need suggests that we could not ever part ways. And the truth of the matter is, for much of humanity, the United States and China did not interact much. In China's long history and in the United States' shorter history, we've both had periods where we closed ourselves off to some extent from the rest of the world, and we each suffered from that, and have found those to be mistakes. But my point is that we don't so much need each other as we should want to have this close relationship. I believe we are on firm footing for that relationship to continue to enmesh at every level. But it's, as I said, the only reason I don't want to say we need to have it, is I don't want to have people underestimate the importance of maintaining the political support for these relationships. That this is a choice, that every day we should get up and think about this as an important relationship that we choose to have and that we choose to build up, and not take either side for granted under the notion that, well, we need each other. We benefit tremendously from each other, and we should want to grow that relationship even more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu. And first of all, I would like to thank Representative Frey and also the UCF to income me, myself, and my colleague to be here. It's really a very enjoyable event for us. Particularly, we can see a lot of young faces here, so I can see the future between our two countries. And also, I welcome our moderator Professor Liu from Taiwan, and I think that also a very good signal for mainland China and the province of China. And I think what I feel also very excited for the first time, maybe not for the first time, for the very special time that the two trade officers speak in the same tone at the forum. So I feel very excited about that. And the topic assigned to this section is, do United States and China need each other? I will start with the short and simple and firm answer. Yes, we do need each other. We all know that the United States and China are the two great nations in the world. And now we are very, very complementary in terms of market, labor, technology, and so on and so forth. You all know that China is the largest developing country. We have abundant labor force and also attractive emerging market. And United States is the largest advanced country, developed country, and you also maintain the advantage in capital, technology, in incentive sectors, and you also now playing a leading role in terms of high-tech knowledge sector. So there are many areas we are complementary each other, and this also give us a very solid foundation for us to become very cooperative and interdependent in many areas. I'm a trade officer. I prefer to. Can you turn to the next slide? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I want to make one observation by using the word indicated by the Vice Premier Wang Qishan when he visited United States last December in Washington, D.C. during the Joint Committee for Commerce and Trade. And during this session, the Vice Premier in China, from China indicated that the trade relation between China and the United States is highly complementary, which define the two countries are not zero-sum game rival, but mutual beneficial and win-win partner. I think that's exactly in line with the comment made by His Excellency Ambassador Renner. And also, I will tell you something from the trade perspective to further demonstrate to you the complementary and interdependent nature of our two economies. The China and the United States set up our diplomatic relations 31 years ago, 32 years ago nowadays to say. We set up our diplomatic relation in 1979, and at that time, our bilateral trade only less than 2.5 billion. And last year, our bilateral trade reached 385.3 billion. That is 150 times higher over the last 3 decades. So that can indicate the fast-growing pace of our bilateral trade. And on average, every year, average growth rate is about 20%, and last year it's over 30%. And the next slide shows the total trade in goods last year of China, and United States can account for, our bilateral trade can be accounted for more than 10% of our total trade in goods among the world. And next slide, please. And in terms of our bilateral trade relations at the state level in the United States, according to the trade statistic made by the USCBC, that's the US-China Committee on Trade, which indicated that 47 states have registered at least 3 times export growth to China since 2010, while 70% of those have experienced 4 times growth. And in the United States, 30 states now count China as one of the top 3 export markets, and 24 states export more than 1 billion trading goods to China in year 2010. And in terms of investment, nowadays there are in total nearly 60,000 American invested enterprises based in China. They set up either independent or joint venture with Chinese counterpart. And the total paid-in value of American investment in China is about $65.2 billion. Next slide, please. And when we look at the investment coming from China, certainly years before, maybe only 5 years before, there are merely almost no real investment from China to United States. But in the last 5 years, we witnessed very fast growth of investment, FDI, coming from China to United States. And up to now, there are about the 4.3 billion US dollar Chinese investment in the various states in the United States. And those investments cover many sectors such as manufacturing, R&D, trade, transportation, consultancy, and other service sectors. What is more exciting is that the FDI coming from China to United States are moving in a faster pace. And let me just give you an example. Maybe many people already paid the attention to the last state visit of President Hu Jintao from China to the United States in January this year. And the trade issue was among the top agenda of President Hu's meeting with President Obama in the United States. And during the visit, China signed the roughly 45 billion trade and investment contract with the United States, and among which Chinese decide to make the 3.4 billion direct investment to the United States. And that, according to the analysis and the calculation of U.S. administration, that can generate 235,000 new jobs in the United States. So I think those figures can indicate and demonstrate the important and the complementary nature of our bilateral economic and trade relations. And I think with the deepening of our bilateral cooperation, this cooperation indeed benefit our two countries. For the Chinese consumers, they can enjoy the advanced, world-class, new state-of-art product. And for the Chinese business, with the cooperation with American enterprises, we can have the access to the advanced technology, learning the modern management skills, and also gain fund support, as well as create jobs in China. So, and for the American, there are also a lot of benefit. For the American consumers, I think the importation of Chinese goods can improve the welfare of American consumers and the producer. The low-cost, high-quality product from China have served as an effective damper on inflation and also supply the U.S. market, that as well as control the inflation in the United States. And according to one statistic made by Morgan Stanley, import from China can save American consumer about $100 billion US dollar in year 2009. And there are also a lot of benefits for American business. For example, they can take advantage of low-cost labor in China and also take the advantage of size of market in China. Given the time interest, I'm not going to go into the detail. If you have any further questions, I will be very happy to answer them. And next slide, please. Next. And let's move to the topics. Certainly, I fully endorse the observation made by Ambassador Moreno that there is no zero-sum game between our two countries. There should be always a win-win scenario for our two countries, and which majority of people believe from our two countries believe that will and eventually benefit the two people and the two countries. But certainly when we talk about those positive aspects, we certainly won't ignore some issues between our two countries. I'm not also going to the detail, but I can highlight some issues, just like a trade imbalance that Professor Liu pointed out at the outset when he introduced the session. There are also some other topics like Chinese yuan, that's the RMB exchange rate issue that was very hot last year and maybe continue to be hotter this year. And also there are some concerns from the business community of United States about the Chinese investment environment in China, and also the concern from the IPR protection in China. And also there are certainly some others like trade remedy. I just mentioned a few of them. I know and we recognize those issues, and I believe nowadays two countries are making tremendous effort to address those issues so that we can pave the way for our future smooth development. Like I said, I won't elaborate too much on those trade issues, but I just try to use 1 or 2 minutes to answer the question or the issue raised by Professor Liu at the outset concerning the trade imbalance. Indeed, the trade surplus or trade deficit for the United States is one of the top issues on our trade agenda. I recognize that according to the statistic of United States, that China really accounts nearly for nearly 40% of your trade deficit. That is true, but that's not the reason that not directly come from the issue that RMB depreciation or appreciation, not because of the protection of the market. Let me tell the truth. That's simply because, and that is the result of international division of labor against the backdrop of globalization. You know, those transnational corporations, including American transnationals, shift some manufacturing sector to China just to take the advantage of labor, technology, equipment, raw material, and market size of China. So traditionally, those products are manufactured in China. However, when we compare the economic advantage among the different countries, eventually those companies select China as one of the key sources to produce those products for the purpose of economic efficiency. And I think that gave rise for some trade surplus from the Chinese side. But if we look into a little bit detail, you can see American investors are now the losers, including American consumers. They are also now the losers. Let me give you a very quick example. I think you all know the iPad. The iPad carrying the label saying "Made in China," which is sold in the United States for roughly $299 in the U.S. market. However, the Chinese assembling plant only get paid of $4 for assemble those products. Well, the other $160 go to U.S. company doing design, shaping, marketing, and retailing. I just want to give you an example to allow you to look into further what really behind the trade surplus or trade deficit issues. So if you are interested, my PowerPoint may elaborate a little bit more, so you can copy that for further study. And I just want to share those information with you. All in all, I think the China and the United States are highly complementary and interdependent between ourselves. We need to work together to nourish these relations. And we believe, and I believe, American people also believe that dialogue and cooperation should be the first choice to resolve those disputes and the issues. It always does not help if one side always puts pressure on the other side with unwarranted threat on trade sanction or something like that. So we have to pursue the constructive course of action to effectively address the problem. And now I think between China and the United States, we have a lot of very useful channels to conduct our dialogue. For example, at the leaders level, the President Hu Jintao and President Obama at least meet 2 or 3 times a year recently. And also we have the SNED, that is strategic and economic dialogue between our two countries. The next session will be held in Washington, D.C. in early May. We also have the JCCT, that's the Joint Committee on Commerce and Trade issue. That's another platform for us to discuss the specific trade and investment issue. So we need to take advantage of those existing mechanisms to address the concern of our two countries. And I think dialogue is better than any threat. So we need to join hands to work very closely with one another. So that is what I want to say about the general issue between our two countries. As now I'm in Florida, I just want to spend 1 minute to speak a little bit the China-Florida trade relations. Now China is it's Florida's 16th largest export market. Maybe that's due to the geographical distance between our two countries. So I should say fairly that Florida currently does not rank top of the U.S. exporters to the Chinese market. But when I have some analysis, I can say that there are great potentials for Florida and China to be tapped together. Now, Florida export some a lot of products like waste and scrap, chemical products, transportation equipment, computer and electronics, and processed food. And all those products, I believe, have a huge potential to be sold into the Chinese market, particularly the Chinese, like the Florida's orange, grape, tomato, and sugarcane. Given the size of population of 1.3 billion population in China, you can imagine if each and every Chinese eats one orange from Florida, that will be a very big market for you. And also, the Florida is very advanced in terms of high-tech innovation. And also, you have a lot of famous universities like UCF and many others. And I believe that can really tighten our relation in terms of technology cooperation. And lastly, I want to mention just one point, the service cooperation, in particular, the tourism cooperation. Florida also very famous for the Disney World and also the Miami Beach. So I think you will see more Chinese travel to Florida to visit you. So I will end up here. Thank you very much. And I hope sometime you can have a chance to visit China. Thank you.
First, thank you for being here. And my question is, do you believe that China's economy should focus more on domestic demand than export?
Okay, this question probably go to Minister Zhang. Okay, so what's your question? Well, we finish all the questions, then they can answer together. We will try to save time.
You spoke about the need to fill out global rules in today's diverse economy. Variations in economic rules or standards between two countries can strain the trade relations of those countries. Is there any way that the U.S. and China can work together to create a universal set of rules and goals for trade?
Okay, very good. Both questions are outstanding. Now, Minister Zhang, you want to answer the first question?
Okay. When you look at the consumption part of our in terms of the portion of our GDP, you will see a very fast growth rate in that point. And also, let me tell you one figure. According to our statistic, if my memory is correct, on the yearly basis, our domestic consumption grew up by roughly 15 to 17% in China. So I think when China carried out our economic restructuring, right now we believe our economy will change into a more healthy way. That means we will rely more on the domestic market and rely less on the international market. But I think that will certainly take some years if you want to change fundamentally the structure. But we are now moving on the right track. We want to strike a balance on the both international market and also the domestic market. And I don't know whether this is a long answer or short answer. Thank you.
On the question, can the U.S. and China work together to fill out these global rules of trade? Absolutely. On the previous panel, Dr. Dan Wright used the term the most consequential relationship, and I think that's a fabulous word and an accurate word. It's a very consequential relationship, and what we do together, what we don't do together, will have dramatic consequences. And as the world is looking for rules that help trade of goods and services to go across borders more easily, more seamlessly, I think it will be important that U.S. and China work together to develop those rules so that they are fair. The tendency of any country is to write rules for the world that advantage their own country, and that is precisely what needs to be resisted, and we need to work together. Great question.
Thank you for your participation in this panel. Let's welcome you. Thank you for the applause.